We'll be continuing the part 2 series for the typography that we started last week. If we'll be having questions, it would be nice we take note of that. I don't know why James, anytime I start recording, James gets to be removed from the covers. He knows what to do and join in again. So quickly, what we are discussing today is quite an interesting topic, and I know prior to this call, most of us have gone to read more about it, which if we've taken that step, I would say that's smart of us. But nonetheless, we're going to treat what we have today. And so for those that are just getting started, you don't need to worry, because this information also will still be useful for you in every way possible. And so today we'll be discussing still on typography, and we'll be treating more on, we discussed this last week, how to create a consistent type scale for your UI project. And we discussed using good fonts, right? And we discussed the difference between letter spacing, how to select or how to know a font that will be good for your heading and the one that will be good for your body text, right? And also, okay, still from people who care. Please don't let us take it too far, but in context of what they are saying here in terms of still, like when you are on a website and you probably like the font type they are using there. So yes, there's nothing wrong in getting to steal or use the font, right? And developing your intuition. And so what this is just saying is, once you start paying closer attention to, you are going to be a type snob soon. It means that the more you feed your eyes with good typographies, right, it won't be long before you feel pretty comfortable labeling a typeface as awesome or terrible, like once you see it from afar, because you already know this principle, right? I think that's pretty straightforward. And keep your line height in check. I think I did mention this as well. I'll show some practical examples as well. When that loads, I'll go back. And so I told us that just in this book, it shows that for your best reading experience, make sure your paragraphs are between 45 and 75 characters per line. And the easiest ways to do this is just making sure you have a fixed frame of maximum. For me, is 720 pixel. So it's still like 72 characters per line. That is still more safe. So anything longer than that won't be suitable to fit in your text, right? And in this situation, you know, they give us example of 45 to 55 characters per line. We can still say that's like 450 pixel to 550 pixel, for those that are familiar with pixels, right? And then going a bit wider than 75 characters per line can sometimes work too, but be aware when you're entering the risky territory. The longer the character per line, the more stressful it is for the users to actually be able to read that text on our design, be it most times on websites, because it has a larger interface or screen. So when dealing with wider content as well, there are also rules, right? There is nothing to be ashamed of or feel like, a lot of wrongs. It is for us to know the right approach. Now, most people feel because there is space on the interface, they can fill it up with text. No, it's not a must to fill the whole interface with text, especially in situations like this. So if I'm to be in that situation, I will just cut or make my frame 720 pixel fixed. This is a good example as well. This is what I'm saying. So in this situation, 768, there is no crime, it still fits, right? And instead of having it to the end of the interface, it's too long, it gives the users a lot of stress reading it and all of that. To have a fixed width, can you say maximum width for your text frames? It might seem counterintuitive at first to use different widths in the same content area, but the result almost look more polished, which means that we could see the difference in the results. And I would also love to touch on baseline in typography. I can relate this to handwriting when we were in probably elementary school, right? Because it's not only people that are in Nigeria that are on this call. So possibly when we were in elementary school, there are courses we did to help us write better. So if we could track back to those scenarios, there are some lines on those books, right, that help us to write properly, where your G, your small letter G has to be well arranged and all of that. Your P has to be, so it's the same in typography as well when they are creating these type fonts, right? And so alignment plays a lot role in UI design. And because it's a lot, I'm just trying to pick the point one after the other. And then line height is proper. You might have had the advice that line height of 1.5 is a good starting point for readability perspective. For those that are on the call last week, should be able to remember when I showed us practical example on how to achieve this line height of 1.5 when it's a 16 pixel, when it's, and I showed also what they did is just 16 pixel multiplied by 1.5. That will give us 24 pixel. That will give us the accurate line height when you're using the 16 pixel for body text. So accounting for line length, what do we mean by line length? That is relating to just the difference between a text, like I gave example using the holding, the elementary school handwriting scheme. It's still the same. It is typography that we were learning then, we didn't know, right? But now we now see the usefulness and the application of it. So for those that are saying, school is probably a scam, no, it is. If you don't know areas to apply it, that is when it becomes a scam. And so yes, this is a typical example of it. And these are quite basic things that if you read over, we'll get them in in a very short time. And this is for an heading text. Line height and font size are inversely proportional. I did mention this as well. So when you're dealing with heading text, you use a smaller height, a shorter line height for a large text. That is just what they're explaining here, because it is legible enough and the distance between the lines shouldn't be that far apart, right? Should be closer. But when you're using it, when you're dealing with a small text, usually a body text, maybe 16 pixel, 18, 14 pixel, you make sure that it's not too clumsy, so it will be easy for the users to be able to read what you have displayed on your UI easily as possible. And also, yes, this is also a good example. I think people want to join the call. Okay, Coca, do you have a question or yeah?
Sorry, I was asking if you are sharing your screen.
Thank you for notifying me. I thought I was sharing my screen. Okay, can we all see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
My apologies on that. And so this is a very good example when we are designing our UI, and I'm very sure most of us might have made that mistake. So now, because you want to emphasize a link, the default thinking on our mind is every link must have color blue, right? Am I correct? If I'm wrong, do let me know. But I think that's the general mindset. Because it's a link, it has blue, it must do this. But in some situations where the colors are probably almost the same, and that might cause confusion on the interface, right? And you are dealing with just text. It's still under typography, because for the Museum of Glass, which is a link, and Artisan Glass Blowing Artist Makes Incredible Creations, which is the title itself, is almost the same color. So the users can get confused. So what you can do is, for the one that is a link, you can use a subtle, it's a different subtle color, probably a version of gray. Let's see. Yes, that's what they did as well. So because having that much color is going to definitely confuse the users that are going to land on our interface or interact with it or use it as well. It feels a little bit more relaxed than the previous, right? I'll go for this version. When we are also aligning our text, we should always put readability in mind. That's the most important thing. You won't have typography on your, except it's just, even if it is a photographer portfolio website, there will still be text in some areas, so we can't escape these rules. So don't center long form text. My God, let me show you guys a practical example. This is an example of what I was saying. So in most cases, when we are designing for websites or mobile, but I think this is more significant on websites, we tend to, center alignment can look great, right? We tend to center align some design elements like this, independent block or text. But once the text is getting longer than 2 or 3 lines, it starts to look odd. I want reactions on this call. If what I'm saying is, if what I'm showing right is correct or wrong, let me know. So it doesn't look that great anymore, because it is more than 2-3 lines. Sometimes it could be 4-5 lines. It just looks somehow. So in that situation, it's best not to center align anymore. So the best is to just use your left alignment, because that's the best. Users read from left to right when it is getting too long. But in scenarios where it is no more than 2-3 lines of text, yes, you can still center align. These are just basic principles for us to take note. And okay, but one of them is too long. Easiest fix is to rewrite. So now this has answered some questions in our mind. It says if you've got a few blocks of text you want to center, but one of them is a bit too long, the easiest fix to rewrite the content and make it shorter. So there are situations whereby they give you the PRD and the content are too long. It is your job as the UX designer to know, or to test. Those are part of the qualities that set you apart from others, and let them know, oh, okay, we need to make this text shorter to display on this interface, and possibly 2 lines or 3 lines. It's okay. It's just for the users to have a grasp of the information quickly and not to read the whole text. If they want to read the whole text, there will be sections for that on the website. Not only will it fix the alignment issue, it will make your design feel more consistent. So if you have, I've seen some design 2-3 lines, or you see 4 lines in the middle, you see 5 lines. Once you see it from afar, you know that yes, this interface is not there yet, right? This is an example. So you can see that all of the center aligned text is not more than 3 lines, consistent, and is clean. Now, an aspect that most of us get it, especially starting out, we tend to make some mistakes. So when you're displaying numbers in a data table, or I can use I have some examples here that I can use as well, but this speaks on aligning numbers. When you're designing a table, it's best to align them when you're designing a table that includes numbers. It's a simple and short principle. There's some people like, oh, no, I will left align mine. No problem. If you want to left align yours, It's absolutely fine. There is no crime. I believe everybody loves improvements. If you want to improve, then you should do the right thing. And it's pretty straightforward. I know we might still have questions after this, and then that I will be open to as well. These are also basics. And use letter spacing effectively. I would love to talk on this as well. So when we are using letter spacing, and most of us might know what letter spacing is, but nonetheless, we are seeing a good example here. And so when you are creating or designing for a body text, you make sure that you use a normal letter spacing. And I'll show us a practical example as well. Don't let it be negative and don't let it be positive, right? Because it might be the letters might be too far apart and too wide, and that will cause a lot of problems for the users when they are reading or interacting with your website or your design. And when do we use tighter letter spacing is when you're designing for heading text and you want to use that particular font for your header to look more better, to have a better feel. You reduce the letter spacing only for heading text. We could see it here. So if you want to use a family, so let's say you want to use Oswald, and naturally Oswald font family, we know it has a wider letter spacing. So, but in case you want to use that same Oswald for your heading text, it's best to reduce the letter spacing by yourself. And we could see another example is Open Sans, the popular font as well. Open Sans is best for body text and not for heading text because it has a wider letter spacing. So, but when you decide that you want to use that same Open Sans for heading text, it's best to reduce the letter spacing manually by yourself. So most times, just don't leave it to the system and say, "Oh, that is the way Figma brought it to me, and then I'm leaving it that way, or I'm not changing, and all of that." But if you want to, you apply the principles. And I can tell you, these principles, once you apply them, you will see the difference in your designs. Until you use better imagery, you understand alignments better. But in some UI, you might not use shadows at all. In some, you might decide not to use imagery. Yes, it could just be plain text. So how do you survive? What sets you apart? The only thing that will set you apart is typography, because typography is so important, not only in UI, even in graphics, in print design, in almost everything we do. Typography is something we can't do without. It's not complex, right? But if you can get all of these basics and apply them, you're on your way to becoming a very good UI designer. And not just UI, UX. Because if your product or your interface is bad to interact with, if I'm having problem trying to read what you display on your interface for me, then it's giving me a bad experience. And that's a bad user experience. So we can see that they are all interlocked together. So having known this principle, once you want to start your new UI project, you can create a type scale. I mentioned that last week, and there's a principle to that in this book as well. So once you set your type scale, you have everything up front. You already set the letter spacing, the line height for your heading text. You don't need to be repeating the process all the time. You just apply the styles to the particular frame or text frame that you're working with at that time. And that will let your work to be consistent, and you can even design without images if there is need for that. But your UI design will take a new turn, right? I'm limited to show some, because this will be live on YouTube, and I'm limited to show some UI. So yeah, but I designed this. We could see what I was saying, right? I just loaded the design now, so we all can see. So if you can see my mouse from the alignment, you could see what's it saying? Right alignment. when you are designing for your table. I think that's pretty straightforward, right? And so while I was designing, I don't need to go back to to go and watch. I already know that when I'm designing a table, okay, now let me give you an example. Let's say the data increases. I want to duplicate this. We can even see it has already disrupted the interface. So for left alignment, when you are designing for, it's not it, right? So that when people now say, how do you identify the design or what is wrong with the design from afar? It's all these basic points. I don't need to jump into your Figma file to correct your design, but it's like, for me to be able to comment, yes, it's great. But once I cite it from afar, I already know, oh, no, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Improve on this and that. And that is how we become better. Right? It's not overnight, but it's when we learn these principles, we try to apply them daily in our day-to-day activities in design. Then over time, it becomes part and parcel of us. So I don't know. Okay, is this? Yes, it's design. All of these are designs. And then, in case we have questions, the floor is open, and that will be all for typography for today. It's quite our